No. There are loads of management games out there, but none are as good as Rimworld, or as my addiction therapist likes to call it, Exhibit A. It's a sci-fi colony sim that asks the question, how would you run society if given the chance? Are you as much of a disappointment as your father claims you are? And where the fuck did all these guinea pigs come from? A lot of management games can feel like you're just managing a bunch of robots, but Rimworld has you managing actual people with opinions and preferences. And frankly, that's a lot more dangerous. You're not just building a base or fighting off bad guys, you're managing colonists with different moods and needs, sometimes even conflicting ones. They all have backgrounds and traits that affect how good they are at certain tasks, but they also build relationships with each other and form a sort of social web of lovers, rivals, misogynists, and pyromaniacs. You have to expertly navigate through inopportune arguments and mental breakdowns like a kid with divorced parents on Thanksgiving. You're the glue holding this family together, and we're just one cold snap away from raw cannibalism. There is no story in Rimworld. Instead, the game calls itself a story generator, which might immediately set off a red flag if you have any detector for bullshit in game advertising, but I promise you, it's actually the thing that makes Rimworld so entertaining. Everything from storms, pirate raids, disease outbreaks are all just mere gifts from the AI storytelling gods. There's 3 to choose from at the start, that way you can play the game exactly how you want to. Cassandra tells a traditional type of story, progressively raising the tension and making things more difficult over time. Phoebe lets you play a more relaxed game for players who just want to build without too much of a challenge. And Randy Random.
Whatever you're thinking, you better think again, otherwise I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker! I will massacre you!
I like that there's options to experience the game the way you want to. It also leads to arguments in the community over which one is best, which is pretty fun, especially since there actually is a correct answer. While the events that the AI storyteller will throw at you are pretty basic on their own, what the game is trying to do is give the feeling of an emergent narrative. So, although there isn't a handwritten story made by the developer, there's still a feeling of a story being told. It just comes from the player's experience with the gameplay itself. Again, I know that can sound like a roundabout way of saying there's no real story, but the truth is, Rimworld does a really good job of generating a story for you, because the mechanics are all designed in a way to encourage that to happen. Colonists will like or hate each other based on their interactions and traits, so managing those relationships and seeing how they develop over time is kind of a game on its own. It's the reason people enjoy games like Dwarf Fortress so much, even though you have to be the reincarnation of Cypher from the Matrix in order to understand what the hell is going on. Dwarf Fortress is so good at creating narratives that people have made entire communities around sharing the stories that happen in their playthroughs. And it's no surprise that Rimworld is heavily inspired by, and I think improves on, a lot of the concepts of Dwarf Fortress. You'll start by selecting which part of this big blue hellscape you want to start your drug cartel, colony on. Then randomize your starting characters until you've chosen the right sacks of shit for your adventuring purposes. Chelsea here is a psychopath, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a strength, not a weakness. But before you go anywhere, you'll have to learn to navigate this hassle-free, completely user-friendly interface. There is a decent tutorial, but even better than that, there are tons of quality videos online from some really great people. I'd start there. You can basically feed your colonists dog food at this point without them complaining too much, but as things start to look a bit better, they'll expect it to stay that way. You'll start building some bedrooms, a workable kitchen, and eventually, you'll start rescuing and recruiting more people to your colony. It's actually more like slavery, but don't worry about it. So you start splitting up work based on skills, and now you're growing food, and growing friendships, and growing drugs, and researching better tech to do more stuff. Security pretty quickly becomes as important as all the other bullshit you're up to, so you need to start mobilizing. But the one good thing about this big blue hellscape is it's completely devoid of the city of Geneva, and it's not subject to any previous conventions. After over an hour of playing, I can finally give a name to my colony. Seems weird that the game waits this long to give you that option, but I guess they already know they've got me hooked at this point. If you do find a moment when you're not in absolute crisis mode, you can earn a few rewards and even a reputation boost by completing some quests. That'll get you used to forming a caravan and sending some boys out to hopefully not get abducted. But be warned, venturing outside of your colony can be pretty unforgiving, especially if you're as incompetent as myself. So now I've got workers specializing at certain jobs. I'm sending out caravans to trade with other colonies, and I almost have a grasp of how this house of cards is holding itself up. Eventually it gets to the point where things just work. Fuck if I know how this colony is keeping itself together. But I assume it's because everyone stopped complaining and started doing their jobs.
Brilliant! I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
You're gonna want a side hustle to make some extra cash when traders come by and such. I'd say base it around what your colonists are most skilled at, but really, Rimworld lets you do whatever the hell you want. Maybe crafting some valuable art pieces, tailoring a nice coat or two, harvesting a few kidneys, becoming a sheep farmer. Oh, that's a cool colony you got there. How does it work? Drugs. Lots and lots of drugs. That way you can trade for resources you're running low on, and stay prepared for when shit starts to hit the fan. How are those forest fires doing? One issue at a time, Nick. One issue at a time. Overall, the game is just so entertaining. I'd say it has that one more turn feeling, but the game is in real time. So that's a bit of a deadly combination. The sound design is great as well. I didn't think much of the soundtrack at first, but it's important in a game like this for it to hold a certain longevity. But you see my boy Alistair here, the guy knew what he was doing when he wrote this soundtrack. It all makes for a very addictive experience. I mean, it's not a perfect game though, and I do have my complaints. The most obvious being, this situation. I mean, it gets the job done, but it's not super straightforward, especially if it's your first game. Things aren't always what you expect them to be, and the whole thing can do with a fresh coat of paint. Although, I say I have problems with Rimworld's interface, but then I look at its older brother, and I'm like, that's alright. Could be worse, I guess. You start by generating this whole unique world, but most of it ends up feeling pretty uninteresting. Almost all of your time will be spent around the few neighboring colonies, and although you'll have to manage relationships with each faction, there's not a whole lot going on. The quests do help bring some life to this world, but I would have loved to see things evolve a bit more as you play. Maybe these factions could have more defined borders and take actions to influence each other in some way. It's more of a missed opportunity in my mind than an issue with the game. It's also tough to make complaints against Rimworld because the modding community is so phenomenal, and there's all sorts of quality of life improvements, UI tweaks, and just generally cool stuff. There's even a mod to make this game multiplayer, and it shouldn't work. You can't just mod a single player only game and make it with multiplayer without a hitch. I'm not saying it's never been done before, but it's always more complicated than people think it is. Look, I'm not well versed in what it takes to mod a game, but following the dumpster fire that is Skyrim Together and other multiplayer mods for single-player games, let's just say I was skeptical. But I've done full playthroughs with this mod and haven't run into a single problem. So all these mods make an already dangerous addiction become, well, just be careful what you're getting yourself into. It's not the cheapest game out there, and I've never seen it go below $30 on sale, but I have no hesitation recommending it. There's also the royalty DLC available, which adds some new features and gizmos and gizbobs. I mean, I think $20 is a little steep for what it offers, but then again, I don't actually own it, so I have no idea. I've been having a great time with the base game and the Steam Workshop, so I don't think I'll ever feel the need. Yeah, I guess try Rimworld. You'll spend 8 hours building up a colony and then get trampled by a group of wild buffalo.